Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening and welcome to Golden Frequency Radio. Today is Wednesday, October 5th, 2016. I am Beth Carr, intuitive quantum energy healer and your host, here with my friend and co-host, Eric Rains. Hi, Eric.
Good evening.
Eric is the alchemical engineer behind UnleashingNaturalHumanity.com and the etheric parasite and implant removal protocol that we both utilize in sessions with our clients. More information about this work can be found at UnleashingNaturalHumanity.com, as well as the Facebook page, Unleashing Natural Humanity. We also have a YouTube channel, Golden Frequency Radio, where you can listen to recordings of our previous shows. We will be taking calls for the duration of the show tonight. For those of you who would like to join the discussion, please call 619-924-9805 and press 1 to let me know that you'd like to speak on air with us. Or you can also post your questions in the chat in all capital letters for our lovely moderator, Sierra Loveless. Thank you, Sierra. I would like to extend a great big thank you to our audience, those listening live tonight, and those listening later to the archived recording. Let us all take a moment together now to set our intention for tonight's show as being in alignment with the highest good for all, providing space for resonant information, validation, and support for anyone who has found their way to this broadcast. So tonight's show is an open forum. We invite listeners to call with topics or questions or simply to join the discussion. So Eric, how the heck have you been this week? What's new? And I think first and foremost, you should tell us about what happened to you after work yesterday.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So Tuesday is my late day for massage, and I got out at around 8 o'clock in the evening last night. And I was driving down the road, and all of a sudden I see this really, really bright point in the sky, and it was right next to the moon from my perspective. And it, the moon wasn't very full last night. It was just a sliver. We just had that new moon just recently, so it's pretty small, but it was a really clear night, and the moon was particularly bright in and of itself, but this thing that I was seeing in the sky was easily 10 times brighter than that. I mean, it was almost to the point to where I wanted to shade my eyes from it, and it was this brilliant white, blue, reddish, flashing thing in the sky, and I was watching it as I was going down the road, and I'm behind people, I'm next to people, and I'm looking around, and nobody seems to be seeing it. They're all, just driving, not really paying attention to it. I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, how are these people not seeing this? And then I ended up having to take a left when I was going home, and I took the left, and I looked over to my right to see it, if it was still there, and it was completely gone. And when I was able to stop, I went out and I was looking in the sky trying to see if I could find it again. And there was a red and blue, it looked like like how an airplane, the wings, how they have the lights on the ends. But it wasn't blinking. It was just a solid red and blue, and it was just sitting there in the sky. It wasn't moving, and it was very interesting. And this is just coming off of about maybe a week ago here in the Roseville-Rockland area. There was a mass sighting. There was a huge wave of lights that were moving in the sky, and it looked like a group of stars, actually, like stars from pretty far away, but they were moving, and it was going on there. And that night I saw that one, and I just caught the tail end of that, and then maybe about an hour afterwards, when I was going to the grocery store to pick up some food, I saw some really bright lights in the sky that were moving around as well. So it was definitely interesting. I don't know what it was. I couldn't tell you anything other than it was definitely there. It was definitely there.
Were you able to get any sort of like intuitive read, sort of like either from an emotional perspective or any sort of intuitive information about it?
Well, last night I was just so amazed that nobody was seeing this in the sky with as bright as it was. I mean, it was literally almost like the intensity of the sun, but a lot smaller. And I mean, that's how bright this thing was. And I was just so amazed that nobody else was seeing this. But I, after I didn't see it anymore, I did notice that I was especially excited and just calm at the same time. It was an interesting sensation to feel it, and it was. I didn't get like any connectivity or anything like that from it, but I definitely felt different after I witnessed this in the sky. It was a pretty cool sensation, actually.
Wow, that's really fascinating. I've never really had an experience of something as obvious and sort of, close, low in the atmosphere or sort of super obvious like that. So it's really fascinating to me. And I mean, it kind of, intuitively what it brings me to is we're seeing a lot of talk about disclosure. I mean, we always do, but it really does feel, it really feels and sounds like there's a little bit of an increase, a little ramping up of that sort of disclosure agenda, whether it's sort of a false disclosure or a true disclosure. It's hard to determine at this point, but it certainly does feel as though something is moving in that direction, really.
Well, what's really interesting is within the past 2 or 3 weeks or so, the insiders and whistleblowers, like the secret space program and like the Alliance and stuff like that, they've been saying that there are going to be more sightings in the sky, and this is all going to be rolling out right before the data dumps, like the full disclosure. And so we've got, the Julian Assange, who was supposed to be dropping the dime on Hillary at like midnight or something like that on the 3rd, and he ended up like pretty much trolling the world because of it. And I watched the video with what he was talking about there, and it was very interesting because I've seen interviews with Assange before, and he's very well-spoken. He's able to deliver a point quite clearly, and he's always, impeccably presenting himself. He's always got every hair in place, and this one he looked disheveled, he looked tired, he was rambling, and honestly, I think he was, if it wasn't Assange, it was, he was threatened. There was something going on there that just didn't feel right intuitively when I was watching this guy's behavior. And so we've got like all these data dumps that are supposed to be happening, and then the day after, the Gooch for 2.0, apparently he hacked into the Clinton Foundation, and he put those files online. So I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff coming out, and it's all coinciding with the whistleblowers that are saying that, hey, look, this is going to start happening. There's going to be starting to be a lot more mass sightings in the sky. There's going to be a lot more information that's going to be coming forward, and this is all leading up to full disclosure and the mass arrests and pretty much taking the planet back. And it's just really interesting to see how this is all coinciding right now. It's pretty exciting. Like, I'm not going to count my chickens until they're hatched, but I really think that we're close to something. I've been saying for a while now that I really don't think that we're going to be making it to the elections. And if we do, it's not going to be the people who we think is going to be in the elections, like Hillary and Trump. I don't think are, if we do elect anybody, it's going to be them. So it's really interesting going on right now.
Yeah, I have had a similar feeling about the election, which, we can talk about that whole dog and pony show as well, potentially. I sort of try to avoid it to some extent. But going back to Julian Assange, I think that it was InfoWars, I believe, that created I think it was a little bit of disinformation that he was planning on dumping information at that 3 a.m. Eastern Time event, although I haven't watched that video, and I know he planned on doing it from a balcony and then had some security concerns, and it almost seems to me like, I can't remember, you said the name, but I can't remember the name of the hacker that actually did do a Clinton Foundation post, although there's no information in that post. So we're, basically he said that the files are too large, and so he's looking for another way to disseminate that information. But there seem to be there are some, he has that, remind me again what his name is.
It's Guccifier, so Guccifier. I really don't know, but it's Guccifer
or something like that. And so he has reliably provided information from hacks in the past, and so he does have sort of a reliable track record. But it seems to me like maybe those two are working together in some way, potentially.
Definitely. Yeah, that was the first thing that I thought after Assange did his announcement, and then the very next day that he dropped the information like that too. And I'm thinking they're working together. If not, it might even be a team of people, and that they're just under that name and they're all operating together. Just kind of like Snowden was actually a team of anywhere from 13 to 14 people, and Snowden was the one who took the PR, the public, I guess you could say, perception of the one who did it. Because, he got literally terabytes worth of information, like thousands of terabytes worth of information that can't fit on a thumb drive.
Right, exactly. But I think it is really interesting, and I haven't seen the video, but you're not the first person that I've heard say that he seemed not quite himself, and that there was a tone of fear in his energy, which, really, it's surprising to me that anyone in that position is able to stay physically safe, really, because...
Yeah.
So again, just for the listening audience, for those of you who would like to join, if you have a topic that you'd like to cover or a question, or you just would like to join us on air, the number to call is 619-924-9805. And if you call that number and you don't press 1, I will think that you're just listening. So press 1 if you'd like to talk. And then in addition to that, for those of you that have a question or a comment or something to add, but you don't want to speak on air, we do have the chat open, and Sierra is moderating that chat. So you can also communicate with her as well that way. So Eric, I'm going to just sort of open it up for you. Is there anything in particular? I've got a little list of potential topics for us, but is there anything that you in particular would like to talk about?
No, there's really nothing that was popping up for me this week that I felt that we needed to speak about. I've been doing a lot of self-care and really just kind of taking care of myself. I kind of fell off the wagon with my Qigong and moving energy through my body, and it definitely started to take a toll on me. I could feel things like reversing, and it was really interesting. So I've been really focusing on that lately. But, I'm always up for a topic. Just point me in a direction, I'll start going.
Yeah, well, we can talk about that even just a little bit, because I think it's actually a function of the healing process to sometimes sort of revisit maybe where we've been in order to really get a good perspective on how well our protocols work and how far we've come and where our growth is. Because I've actually been hearing that a lot with clients lately, that people are feeling like they have regressed or that they have sort of traveled backwards in their healing work or their inner work or their shadow work. And it's really important to recognize that just because you have the sensation of moving backwards, that is not exactly what's happening, much like when planets go into retrograde. They aren't actually really moving the other way. But there's a lot of opportunity in that, in a multitude of ways. And the truth is that, we're not ever really going backwards. There's an undulating sort of pattern to all of this work that we do. And so, when something like that occurs for us in our individual experience, there's always some opportunity in that. And quite often it's really just to be able to take stock of how far we've come and where we are relative to where we've been. So it serves it really does serve us sometimes to sort of fall off on our self-care, or really anything, the work that we're doing.
Yeah.
We get a lot of perspective with that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, one of the things that I know happened energetically was with the eclipse, that energetic pathway passed right over the Congo, and that's where the Archon invasion was focused in 1996. That was the last major invasion with the dark forces that actually came into the planet and are perpetuating the parasitic construct systems. And so with the eclipse, they actually were opening up negative portals that allowed a much stronger scalar wave attack to happen to people who are in the process of ascension, who are in the process of waking up and activating DNA. And so if you've noticed since then that there's been a way higher increase of people just, losing it. There's a lot more frantic activity, a lot more hopelessness. There was a lot of stuff that was going on. And I hadn't been doing my self-care for a while. So when I first started off all of this, there was a good 6 or 7 months of every day I was doing yoga, I was doing energy work, I was doing sun gazing, I was doing walking meditations. There was all kinds of stuff that I was doing that led to those activations that allowed me to dissolve the chakra system into the Dantian system, that allowed me to become aware of the parasitic construct to begin with. And so I noticed that I'd been kind of falling off on that. Like I hadn't done yoga in like 2 or 3 months. I hadn't done Qigong in like 2 or 3 months. And I was still, right at the forefront, still doing all the work. And I felt it when it happened. I didn't know exactly what happened, but I was definitely, it felt like I was kind of drowning underneath it. And that was one of the things that really opened my eyes to this. It was like, hey, you need to take care of yourself. It doesn't matter how busy that you're getting. It doesn't matter how much work you're doing, because, I've got my massage business, I've got the energy business, and then I've got 3 kids that are here at the house with me. And, it takes up a lot of my time. And so it doesn't matter how busy you get. You need to take care of yourself, So I was really looking at the value of scheduling out time just for me to start healing. And so I started my energetic practices again with the Qigong and stretching and moving energy around through the body, and immediately I started feeling a lot better. And I mean, this wasn't something that was like, oh yeah, I feel a little bit better. No, it was like, no, it was night and day. It was all of a sudden, I was smiling again, and I was having a good old grand time like I used to, and it was something that really kind of opened my eyes to this. It's like we have to stay on top of it. You can't just fall off and expect to stay at the same place that you were without working towards it. We're in a system that is designed to drag you down from every aspect and every angle, and unless you are actively doing the programming yourself, something else is going to take over and do the programming for you. And so it's very important, and you really start to value yourself, and you start to value the work that you do towards becoming better than you were the day before. And it's not something that you can, do once here and once there and expect to feel a benefit from it. It's something that you really have to do every day, even if it's just 5 minutes of mindfulness, 5 minutes of deep breathing activity, and appreciating yourself, appreciating the silence of the mind. It's really powerful when you recognize how far you've fallen off of that path, and then you can get right back on the bike though. So it was a valuable lesson, really valuable lesson.
Really valuable, and it's coming in intuitively for me around that actually there's probably something to the experience you had of feeling that energy shift as a function of kind of being in that lower vibrational place, having dropped off with your daily self-care protocol. So, even though obviously I'm so glad that you're back on it and you're feeling better, but it does really feel like that experience was very purposeful, even just from the perspective of being an energy healing facilitator. It gives you a lot of insight, really, about, well, a multitude of things. Obviously, being so sensitive to energy and feeling kind of low enough to feel that, it might be that had you never dropped off that protocol, you wouldn't have noticed that energy in the way that you did. And I think, and it's interesting that you bring up the topic of self-care because, September was an incredibly intense month energetically for all of us, whether we were on the side of being aligned and in the euphoric end of that spectrum, or on the opposite, dichotomous end of that spectrum, which is what you described of, there's a lot of destruction occurring. A lot of people are sort of losing it, like you said. And there are themes within that most recent energetic experience that seem to, there's always collective themes of some sort, and that foundational self-care, self-worth, self-love is definitely one of those themes, as well as these major life changes. Boundaries seem to be a huge theme right now, where people are really figuring out where they need to draw the line in the sand, getting a really strong call to know when to say no, or, where, really finding where the line is between what is okay for you as an individual in your life experience and what's not okay anymore. And then relationships, I think, is another really strong collective theme, that relationships, all sorts of relationships, are going through really fundamental changes, and that includes the relationship with the self, which brings us back to the self-love, self-worth theme, which is really the foundation, right? It's like I've been having some conversations lately about how I'd like to redefine the term self-centeredness as being a positive term that really translates into, beginning from within the heart space and radiating out. And so it really does begin right there with that relationship with ourselves. And we have, the energy right now is so supportive of developing that relationship with ourselves in the context of self-worth and self-love, and that it all sort of begins there. That's where it all begins.
Yeah. Well, that's what it's all about, We're here to do a job, and the body that the soul is incarnated into, it's capable of some amazing things. The thing is that we have to develop the communication between the consciousness and the body, and we have to let the connectivity, that mind-heart connection, really start to open up, and that's where we really start to pick up the skills and abilities that are intuitive, that are ingrained inside the DNA, and start activating the DNA from what it's been shut down into what it's supposed to be. And without that mindfulness exercise, it's like pushing a rock up the hill. If you stop doing it, it's going to start sliding down. You constantly got to push it up and push it up and push it up until you reach the top. And once you get there, it's easy to put it wherever you want, but, it's work getting there. And that's kind of what we're facing right now. And with that negative portal that was opened up in the Congo, all of a sudden the hill kind of got steeper. So, it was definitely interesting to be able to feel it on that perspective because, for the past couple of years, I'd be hearing people talk about all these negative energies and these negative attacks, and I was like, what are they even talking about? I don't feel anything, because I was riding the energy so strongly. I was cresting the wave, and everything was behind me, and I didn't feel any of it. So it was really a valuable tool to be able to be in the middle of it. I'd never been in that before. Well, I had, but not for a long time. It was like the dark night of the soul type energy got me to this point to begin with, and so I've been used to dealing with those types of energies, but I wasn't dealing with them healthily. Back in like 2011, 2012. And it was really interesting to kind of see where I came from.
Yeah, it's like feeling that from your expanded perspective and awareness. And it's interesting you say that because my experience.
Hello?
Okay. Hopefully I'm still there. I apologize. I dropped the phone. So my
yeah, I hear you.
Back unplugged but we're back on now. So yeah, my experience of that day that you're describing is actually totally opposite of your experience, and it makes sense because I am sort of in a cresting of the wave place in my own personal experience. And let's bring that back to that daily work because, really, when you can start with 5 minutes a day, you make it a daily habit of protocol, a daily commitment. But eventually, that 5 minutes becomes every moment. It becomes moment by moment, and really, my intention is to be doing the work and aligning literally every new now moment. Even when I'm sleeping, my intention is still set and active to, to be, there's a number of things that I intend for every now moment. But that's really what it comes down to. It comes down to not only do you do it every day, eventually you just do it constantly. And I do believe that is really where we're headed. And this idea of activating our DNA and, what the body goes through in this ascension process, it's my feeling that it happens naturally. I mean, it really happens organically when you clear the path for it too. We already know how to do this, maybe not in our cognitive human brains, but there are aspects of us that are totally on top of this. There are each one of us has a higher dimensional aspect that has all of the information. And so our human consciousness is on a need-to-know basis. We don't necessarily cognitively know exactly what's happening or what's coming or how the pieces fit together unless it's unless it's necessary for us to. And so our job really is to just clear that path. It's to keep the path clear and to keep ourselves aligned and protected so that that process can occur. And it feels to me as though it's a very natural, organic process. It's like labor and birth. Once that thing starts, there's no stopping it. It just happens. The body just knows what to do. And I think ascension is not much different. And when we clear our path of anything that's interfering with that path, then it's not necessarily really even a difficult or uncomfortable process. And in fact, from my perspective, it's incredibly enjoyable when we can remain aligned, in the mental, emotional, spiritual, energetic, and physical space that is holistically healthy, really.
Yeah, we have to get out of our own ways. Like, just allow it. Stop trying to cognizate it. Stop trying to think about it. Just get out of the way and let it happen.
Yeah, there's no point in trying to make human brain cognitive sense of a lot of this stuff. And, we're trained to do that. That's part of the programming. We're programmed to be heavily in the brain cognitive level of intelligence. And it doesn't always serve us to let the brain be in charge. It definitely plays a part, and it's an important part, but it's not the only level of intelligence that we have at our disposal. And so sometimes analyzing the heck out of it and trying to get the questions answered is actually just a distraction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's see, what else should we talk about here? I mean, we really could go pretty deep into the energetic current events, although, it's such a broad topic, we could really go anywhere with that. I'm actually kind of interested in just talking about street level, human planet Earth current events a little bit as well. I tend to not have a whole lot of super factual or in-depth awareness of that. It's sort of just, it's on my radar, but I don't go too in-depth with current events, although I feel like right now it really does play in and inform about what's happening, energetically and spiritually and etherically, sort of just how flippin' wacky the world is right now. I mean, I just read something. I mean, we could talk about these presidential this presidential election, but it's honestly just so incredibly cartoonish to me, and so incredible. I mean, it feels like it's a practical joke more than anything else. I saw a meme on Facebook yesterday that said something about how, we're having issues with clowns, bothering people across the country, and also an egomaniac sociopath billionaire is running for president. Where's Batman? We need Batman.
Where's Batman? That's great. Seriously, we've got clowns terrorizing the country and a crazy billionaire. That is hilarious. Yes, where is Batman?
Where's Batman? So, I mean, I don't really know anything about this clown thing. Is this some sort of social psyop, or is the? I mean, what's your take on this? I don't really even. I guess I don't know that much about it. I've a little bit here and there, but.
So for a little bit now, there's been some people going around doing these social experiments, I guess you could say, but they're not really even social experiments. They're more along the lines of domestic terrorism. We've got people who are dressing up in Islamic clothing and turbans, throwing backpacks at people, yelling Allahu Akbar, and running away, and everybody's jumping out of the bus or jumping into water and all this crazy stuff. And we've got stuff like that going on. And then we have this other group that's dressing up as scary clowns with mock dead bodies with watermelons as heads and smashing them with kind of just evolving. It's people were seeing all the reactions that were being gotten here and the internet fame that these people were getting, and what I feel like what happened is an evolution of that type of energetic projection that was being put out with these types of pranks that were going on, and so you end up with people who are, I guess you could say, more able to be led around who saw this, and they started wanting to emulate it. But instead of having the platform like these other people did, they just started going out and doing this. And so they're walking around in clown outfits and just terrorizing people, walking around with baseball bats and like knives and stuff like that. And I haven't heard of like any violence that's actually happened, but they're doing this for the scare factor. And it's seriously, it feels to me like the original people that did this were guided into it simply for the fact that they knew it would catch on eventually. And they might not have been intentionally doing it, but this was the way that the energy was being led with that. And so these people are pretty much dressing up as terrifying clowns and walking around at night and walking up on people, and just it's a thing that's starting to happen now. And so we've got all these, I guess you could say, reactions from it of people getting ready to fight. If they ever see a clown coming up on them, they're going to go beat it up, and we're finding that like people who are doing like actual, birthdays and stuff like that who've been clowns for a while, they're getting attacked. It's almost like the Islamophobia, but anybody can be a clown. So, it's a very interesting societal crux point right here, to where we're seeing how, and it doesn't matter what race you are, anybody can dress up in grease paint and put a wig on, and so it's kind of a separation at that level right there, and people are getting very upset by it. A lot of people are really scared by clowns, and it's putting us into a fight or flight response, and it's happening quite a bit, actually. It's really interesting to see where the energy is being led right now, and the people who are susceptible to it, who are actually manifesting it right now.
Yeah, it almost feels like a distraction. I mean, there's so many of those, which leads me to another thing that is not on my list, and I never thought that these words would come out of my mouth on air. But I don't know if you saw this little news clip about how Kim Kardashian was held at gunpoint in Paris, and everything about that just so completely fabricated. It doesn't even make any.
You know what happened literally the day before that was kind of on the radar before that happened, and the media drowned it out with Kim Kardashian being assaulted in Paris at gunpoint. They connected the CIA with a PR firm, Hollywood PR firm, and over $500 million were spent on ads and terror videos for ISIS.
Oh, yeah, I did see that. So all of those videos that we saw released a couple of years ago of those beheadings were actually fabricated. That was propaganda created by...
Yeah, it was all green screen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was all funded by the CIA.
It kind of feels like that, and this clown thing, it's all sort of, it really all feels like just a focused distraction.
Oh, yeah, they're running out of things to distract the American people. I mean, the corruption has never, ever been more in your face. It's never been at this point. I mean, everybody always knew corrupt politicians were corrupt. Everybody always knew that the game was rigged. They just never had the evidence that was so in your face. And I mean, this is stuff that you really can't shy away from anymore. What was conspiracy theory 10 years ago has been proven. We've got world banks rigging economies, rigging the gold and the silver rates for, setting up these massive bubbles and these collapses. Like 2008 was completely and totally engineered. And then when everything was dirt cheap because everybody was declaring bankruptcy, they swoop in and they picked everything up at, pennies on the dollar. This is all, it's not conspiracy theory anymore. This is all fact. We've got all these emails from the absolute corruption that's happening with the Democratic National Convention. And it's stuff that, even 10 years ago, if you tried to talk about this, everybody would look at you and say, oh, tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorists. This is all fact now. You can't deny it anymore. And so we're seeing these distractions popping up more and more and more just to keep us off of that vein of thought right there, because they know their time's almost up. They know for a fact that they're not going to be able to hold on to this any longer, and, they don't have the money anymore. Like the United States is completely and totally broke. Our economy is completely collapsed. The only thing that keeps it going right now is the faith that the dollar is worth something from the American people. And it's not, that there's nothing backing our economy right now. It's completely and totally hollow. Like the paper that we print the money on is worth more than the actual money itself. It's, I believe it's only 18 countries right now that are even accepting the United States dollar. And that's something that you won't hear. But it's fact. This is stuff that we can look at and we know for a fact is happening. There's no shipping ships coming into the United States, and there's nothing going out. Like, the economy is at a complete and total meltdown point, and I'm amazed that it's still going right now, honestly. But this is the stuff that they're trying to distract us from, and it's doing a decent job.
So let's talk a little bit about, and so this is something else that seems to be really huge news, but I've only seen it in a couple of places. So I'm not totally clear on it, but what I have read is that the situation in Syria has now reached a point where I believe Russia is potentially doing I think it's some sort of a drill to prepare for a nuclear exchange. Do you know anything about that?
Oh, yeah. So Russia, I don't know the whole ins and outs of it. I just got a little couple bullet points on it, but they just did a massive 40 million person drill where they got everybody underground, and it was in preparation for a nuclear strike from the U.S. That was what the whole media release about that was about. And Putin has been saying a lot of really incredible stuff about the upcoming election here in the United States, and about how if either of those candidates are elected, that they are looking at war with the United States, and not because they are actively searching it out, but because that's where it's going. Because he's talking about how everybody already knows that the United States is no longer a world superpower. We don't have the petrodollar anymore. We don't have the that clout in the international community to say, if you don't do what we want you to, we're going to put sanctions on you and you can't buy oil. And so they know that they're looking for, they know that our government is looking for a war. We're looking for something to keep us in that spot of world domination, because we don't have anything other than military might right now. And like, there's no way for us to keep countries in that third world status because of sanctions that we put on them. All we have right now is a massive military that we've built up for, God knows how long, when we were in a position to do it. And so that's what the powers that are here in the United States are looking for, being able to exercise, because everybody knows ISIS is a proxy between the CIA and Mossad. Everybody in the international community knows this. Everybody knows that we've been setting up these terrorist organizations since God knows when. The earliest I know is Al-Qaeda back in the, Saddam Hussein back in the 70s to fight against the Shah of Iran, and then Al-Qaeda set up to fight Saddam Hussein, and then the moderate Syrian rebels that we were arming, who became ISIS. And so, everybody sees the problem, reaction, solution that's on a massive scale in the world economy, in the world, the structure, and they recognize it. And so they know that we here in America, our government here in America, is looking for any excuse whatsoever to start World War III, because they know that's the only way that they're going to be able to stay in power. They have all this military might, but they've got no gold backing behind it. They've got no financial backing behind it. And so the only way to actually go and take it is to start another war. And so that's what they're looking at right now. And he's flat out talking about this and saying this is what's going to be happening if like one of these idiots, one of these clowns is put in the office. So it's a very interesting situation that we've got going on. But one of the most troubling things that I've heard with all of this is that apparently the nuclear weapons aren't active anymore, and we haven't had nuclear capability for the past 4 or 5 years. They've been completely and totally deactivated. So I don't know what's going on with all of that. It's a very interesting situation. You know, I can only kind of parrot what I've been hearing. So I don't know.
Well, it should be a very interesting month starting now.
Yeah, definitely.
So it looks like we have a caller. Yeah.
Oh, what's that?
I was just going to say, when you're finished, we'll take a caller here.
Okay. The only other thing that I have to add is apparently fall of 2016 is supposed to be when most of this starts to dismantle. We shall see. It's going to be a very interesting month.
Yeah, we've been doing a lot of looking into dates, my partner and I, and that's pretty consistent. The fall of 2016 definitely sort of feels like that. There's a culminating feeling.
It's all building up.
That's definitely building. Yeah, for sure. Okay, we're going to go ahead and take a call. Area code 310. Hi, you're on the air. What's your name?
Oh, this is David. I was just listening.
Oh, okay. Hi, David.
First
I
time
will
listening.
go. Yeah, okay. I'll just go ahead and let you listen then. I'll take you back off. I never trained as a radio show host, as we can all tell here.
Well, I mean, honestly, who has? That's a small group of people.
It's a small group. Yeah, it's fun though. I really enjoy doing the show and connecting with you as well as our audience. So let's talk. Let's go back to this idea. You just said it right before I tried to force David to talk on air. You're talking about how the information that you have is that we don't have nuclear capability on this planet anymore, which is really supported by all of the evidence that we have gathered by, Air Force pilots, et cetera, people who have come out and told their stories about how nuclear warheads have been systematically deactivated for, I mean, I don't know when the first account of that is, but it's decades, certainly.
The very first one that I ever heard about was back in the 60s and the 70s, and then especially right around like the Cuban Missile Crisis with Kennedy. That's where like the real mass shutting down of those actually started to happen.
So what is it that you think? We just have these nuclear warheads that are actually just disabled, but no one's talking about how they're disabled because it's important for
national security.
For the charade to continue, basically.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what it is. National security is the charade to, keep everybody separated and divided into borders and at each other's throats. We always need an enemy. In the 80s it was Russia, and the 2000s it was Afghanistan and Iraq. We always need somebody to go after, somebody to, they're out to get us, so we have to get them first, that kind of a thing. And North Korea, they're talking about testing missiles and stuff like that over there. Well, we don't have the capability to blow stuff up like that anymore. When Hiroshima and Nagasaki actually happened, it sent out energetic ripples that were responded to almost immediately. Like all of a sudden there was an understanding in the higher galactic consciousness that, hey, this is not allowed. This is not something that is okay, and we are going to stop it. We are going to, and it's not like we're going to come down and invade and shut everything down and take over like that. No, we're just going to turn these off. You are not allowed to do this anymore. And that's kind of what's been happening. That's what I've been hearing, and we haven't been able to see any recent nuclear tests for a long time. I think the last one that they actually exploded that they were testing was in the early 80s, before I was even born. I was born in 85, and I think it was 81 the last time that they actually detonated one. Now, that being said, there are other ways to cause mass destruction, not on the scale of a nuclear weapon, but we still do have weapons that can really, cause a lot of damage, whether it's biological or things along the lines of, what was the one that they just detonated over in China not too long ago, but you could actually see the ions crackling from that one. It was a massive explosion. It wasn't as big as, say, a nuclear weapon or anything like that, but I mean, easily 50, 60 city blocks could have been annihilated inside of that explosion right there.
So I thought I just read recently that North Korea was doing nuclear testing. So that's disinformation, most likely?
Yeah. And the thing about North Korea is you can't trust anything our government says about it. North Korea they're just like Libya. And Gaddafi was trying to get everybody off of the international currency and start his own gold-backed standard, and he was really raising the quality of living for everybody in the area. Now, that being said, there's a lot of weird stuff that's going on with, like, Kim Jong-un and Kim Jong-il before him, who, supreme leader and stuff like that. But honestly, I can't tell you if that stuff's true or not. We don't have firsthand knowledge of it. We don't know anybody from those areas, and I really would enjoy finding somebody who lived in North Korea who managed to get out and, ask them what's going on.
Yeah, really it is true that any information that we receive through any normal channels, it's highly suspect.
Yeah, highly suspect.
Let's see. Where should we go from here? So let's go kind of in a totally different direction, and this is a topic of extreme interest to me. This Dakota pipeline protest that's occurring here in the United States, and the part about this that is so interesting to me more than anything is that what's happening there is that for the first time, really the first time in history that we're aware of, the native tribes or nations are coming together in a way that they never have previously.
Yeah.
Aligning behind the protection of the water, which culturally, from an indigenous perspective, water is not a commodity. It's a living force. Very tied into to everything, really. So to me, this almost sort of feels like an example of how, it's kind of an example of the chasm. So we have all of this really sort of heinousness and ridiculousness happening, but then and the world sort of seems like it's on fire. But then on the other side of that, we have these sorts of situations happening where, despite the division tactics, people are really organically coming together. And this in particular has a lot of momentum behind it. It's really amazing, actually. And when I talk about it and think about it, I get a very specific resonance with that, a very specific feeling around it. It feels really unique and important.
It's because it is very unique and important. We've been seeing nothing but massive oil spills from pipelines all around the world that is just devastating the ecology of the area where it happens. And, there are massive cleanups that have to go into it, but the area is never the same again. And honestly, I truly believe that this is done on purpose. This is one of the ways that the powers that were are starting to recognize that, hey, we need to start taking away things that people can live free of the control systems. So if we take away their water, if we take away their ability to grow their own food, then they are dependent upon us. And so you'll never see any type of disaster like this happening in areas that are like Monsanto's GMO fields or anything like that. It's always in areas where there's a self-sustaining culture, a self-sustaining population in the area. And what's going on with this is the indigenous, the natives, are realizing that this is what is going on, and you are taking away our right to exist free of these control structures. And I mean, as much as they're able to, because I mean, the natives, they've really had a rough deal over the past couple of 100 years, and they're relegated to these reservations to where, you know, they've got only a limited, tiny percentage of what they originally were part of in the beginning. I don't want to say owned, because they didn't really own the land, they were part of the land. And to have all these pipelines going up and have all of these people coming together and recognizing, like, this is just the next step before there is a massive disaster here and it wipes us out as a people. And you look at the reservations around states right now with the water quality there already, and I mean, these people, it's worse than Flint. You know, it's really awful stuff that is going into the water that these people have no other choice but to drink. You know, you can boil water all you want to kill bacteria and live cultures inside of it, but the mineral content doesn't go anywhere. And when there's poison on a mineral level inside the water, the only thing you can do is distill your own water. And, you know, it is easy, but it's not easy when that's how you have to supply all of your drinking water. And so you're recognizing that the indigenous are coming together, the natives are coming together as never before. Tribe is transcending the barriers of tribe and recognizing we need to make a stand. We need to stand up, and we need to realize that we need clean water. We need clean land. You know, this is what we need in order to exist as we are supposed to, instead of under these control structures that are completely and totally dominating right now. And so it's a massive stand energetically right now that's happening. This is a recognition of the crux energies that are happening right now. It's all spiraling up to this point to where there is going to be a massive transition, and we're starting to look at the beginning of this right now. We're starting to look at people dropping their preconceived notions of, this is my area, this is my border, this is who I am, and you're outside of that. And they're coming together to recognize that we are one people, and we all need water. We all need clean land. We all need the ability to be self-sustaining, and that's what the whole agenda is about, trying to take out, trying to get rid of, you know. And it's a very powerful moment. It really, truly is.
Yeah, it's really powerful for the indigenous people to come together that way. And then through that, those of us who don't identify as indigenous or only have small aspects of us that identify with indigenous but are other than indigenous, sort of, you know, in the ways that we are required to identify ourselves that way. Really, there's an entire global movement of people getting behind the protection of this water. And I mean, yeah. It's become incredibly global. And like, as an example, I have a local client here who has a position within a local tribe here. And so she told me that her nation and quite a few other nations are lending their lawyers to this situation. And so what they're, you know, really what they're sort of going for is this idea that, I mean, the United States government has broken every single treaty that we've had with First Nations people. I'm pretty sure every single one.
Every single one.
Every single one. And so this really may be the beginning of that shift, which really has a potential of a great level of momentum being gathered behind it, sort of from the perspective that we all are part of one organism, and that includes our planet and every single living being upon it. And so that all of those division tactics are really getting undermined just with this one situation, which is incredibly, it's really, really exciting. Just as a reminder to our audience, once again, if you'd like to join the discussion, the number is 619-924-9805, and then press 1 if you'd like to join the conversation.
One of the things that really sticks out with me with this whole situation is that what I am intuitively guided to is recognizing that we need to get involved. And it doesn't matter how you get involved, but you need to put your energy on this and focus on this, because this is one of those collective consciousness points right here to where massive change is available in the future through this portal. And the more people who put their consciousness and their energy towards this right here, right now, the bigger the change is going to be. And that's what I'm intuitively guided to. We all need to really get involved with this.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, let's do it right this moment. Let's invite everyone who's listening now, as well as everyone who listens in the future to the recording, because time and space are irrelevant when it comes to these sorts of things. Let's all take about 30 seconds right now to lend our supportive intention to that situation. And there's a couple other things we should do that with before this show ends, but let's go ahead and do that now. Just silently take 30 seconds. I really love doing that sort of thing because it's immediately viscerally apparent when you get 2 or more people involved in something like that. It's really incredible. Feel the power of it really just absolutely immediately. Okay, it looks like we have a caller. How exciting. Area code 347, you're on the air.
Hi there, how are you all?
Hi, I'm doing really well. What's your first name?
My name is Jim.
Hi, Jim.
Hi. I think that with the state of the world right now, it has been in this negative state for Alexander the Great. Started much of his quest for domination of other regions. And it does feel as though the 2 groups of people, one group suffering the most and the other group not suffering the most. And I think the group at the bottom, the free thought movement, comes with a big plus, and that is the release of hormones, certain hormones that give us a great feeling. On the downside, the free thought movement puts the onus on the oppressed to make their situation better, which is tantamount to blaming the victim for being a victim. Not that some people don't stay in a cycle of victimization, but generally it isn't the case that the average poor person wants to be poor and suffering. We have a system set up where middle groups and upper groups benefit from that oppression. Why? Because you can pay females less, you can pay blacks less, you can bomb regions and take their oil and blame them for coming over a border that is a man-made border in the first place. So I think that there's a danger to the free thought movement, and that is that it's going to ostracize other groups who can't meditate and miraculously have food appear. And I don't think many people in the free thought movement realize that they are part of the problem. I think they often consider people like me to be an enemy, as opposed to, well, that's an interesting perspective. So that's been my finding. My friends that are in the free thought movement are often delusional to the problems that the communities that I interact with the most face, Tino and Native Indian. And that's the big divide that we have in the peace movement. One group has positive thoughts, the other group is getting hit over the head.
That's definitely an interesting perspective. One of the things that I really have been trying to integrate is the inclusiveness. It doesn't matter what anybody believes. It doesn't matter what you feel or what you think is true. As long as we're all here for the betterment of each other, as long as I'm here for the betterment of me, the betterment of you, what does it matter what we believe? This is the common grounds that we all need to come in together on. We all need to recognize that every single person has a right of existence, and by having that right of existence, there's certain things that they are entitled to, food, clean water, shelter. Things like that should be something that everybody is provided just simply for being here, for being on this planet, and not something that we need to fight to get. We shouldn't have to scrabble to get the rent together every month. We shouldn't have to, make that choice between food and, that next bill. Stuff like that, it keeps us divided as a people, because just like you were talking about, you have the haves and the have-nots. And it's a really powerful thing when we start recognizing it really doesn't matter what you think or what you believe. As long as you're here for the betterment of humanity, for the betterment of this planet, who cares? Believe whatever you want. We can still come together as people on those common grounds, though.
That is can I tell you that is the we're all human argument? In the black community, what we tend to say is Black Lives Matter. The response generally is, well, all lives matter. The black community isn't saying all lives matter. The black community is saying, since we're the ones at the bottom generally, excluding, of course, Native Indians on certain reservations are also going through hell, that we deserve some focus. If there's a hurricane, you don't focus the resources in the region where there isn't a hurricane and then say all lives matter. Well, what you just presented is kind of similar in that, well, we all know that there's suffering, so let's just work together. And the point that many of us try to make to our so-called liberal and open-minded free thinkers is that, yes, we all know that there's suffering and that we should work together. The problem is, are we working together on the same playing field? Are we equal? And the truth is, no, we're not. So then we say in my community, well, yeah, we're working together, but I need more help than you need. Now, it isn't always the case. You can find a poorer white person than a poorer black person, but if you look at it statistically, in terms of poverty, suffering, the jails, AIDS, homelessness, etc., you find disproportionate emergency SOSs in my black-brown community, and the world's telling us, well, we're all going through the same pain, so let's hold hands and work together for everyone, but we'll go from suffering on level 1,000 to maybe level 900, and the average Caucasian Anglo will go from suffering on level 100 to suffering on level 50. So it's still discrimination and it's still division, but eloquently phrased in another way, and I don't think liberals understand that. I don't know if some ever will, because we've been crying for 400 years in America.
I absolutely agree with everything that you just said, Jim. And I can say as a Caucasian woman, although Caucasian isn't even an appropriate term, because that, if we look at the history of that term and where it was created, it's not appropriate. But, as a white woman, really my perspective has to be that really the most important thing that you're saying to me personally here is that what has to matter to me is that the people in your community get their basic needs met and that their suffering ends as a higher priority than, obviously I mean, I think what I'm trying to say is that we have to address the deepest level of suffering within humanity, instead of saying all lives matter or, let's work together to try to accomplish, equanimity and equality for all. I agree with you. We have to focus on where the most pain and suffering is occurring. And, the reality is that that what you're saying is true. And even if it's uncomfortable for those of us that have no idea what that experience is, we have to be willing to try to empathize and listen. And not only empathize and listen, but take action in our own small way in our daily lives. And there's a multitude of ways that every single person can do that. But it takes an effort. It takes putting yourself out there, facing your own discomfort, being brutally honest with yourself about what's really occurring in the world and the level of suffering that you have never personally experienced. But you have to own that suffering as if it was your own, if anything is going to change.
Mm-hmm. The bottom line is that if you are on a humanitarian mission and you have two people in front of you, one person who hasn't eaten in 3 days and one person who hasn't eaten in 3 weeks, that person who hasn't eaten in 3 weeks takes precedence. Bottom line.
Yes. And I feel the same way about the male-female dynamic. I'm a male, but I know that sexism exists, but I'm not a female, but I can empathize. And so it isn't up to me to say, well, my male challenges trump the females. I'm not a female. But once I say, well, I know best, and I get together with a group of males, and there are 100 of us on a council or on a board, and we make the decisions for the females, obviously we're missing the point. And if we tell the females then, hey, what are you talking about? You're a sexist. Why can't a group of men get together? Oh, you hate America. Oh, we're going to shame you, ship you back to female bill, right, or burn your sports uniforms. Then it shows kind of a lot of what some groups go in this nation. And actually in parts of Europe, I've lived over there also. Humanity is doomed, I shouldn't say doomed. It feels kind of doomed. But humanity is in trouble not because we're stupid, but because we allow leaders who tend to be about power and finance and land grabbing to keep us divided. And when I say divided, I don't mean that we come together and we're equal in our strengths and pain or happiness, but united against the big picture, which is the puppet masters. But then we can't lose the fact that females have certain rights that they need protected, Native Indians have certain, blacks have certain. Then it gets more deep. Well, which ones are the priority? We don't like to, and it's not just in the white Anglo community, it's also in the black community. People like Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton are put there to serve two purposes. One is to scare the hell out of the average white person, and the second is to get rich. They get paid as black people get played. If you all may not know it, that the black community doesn't vote on Jesse or Al. They're self-appointed.
Yeah.
They're not, and so they're a divisive lightning rod. If someone is killed in my community and Jesse or Al show up, automatically it's like waving a flag of ignorance. But we have no control over that because they have been chosen by the establishment, not by us.
Yeah, it's kind of like
I think you really nailed it right there.
Yeah, it really is, because it's exactly like this pipeline situation. A bunch of really wealthy businessmen, white businessmen, got together and made a decision about where this pipeline goes. And there were, the Lakota Sioux were not in those meetings. They were not, their perspective and their opinion and their ability to voice, the importance of protecting their water, that wasn't even a part of that conversation. But now what we're looking at is a global conversation around that, which, opens up the potential for more of those kinds of conversations, right, where people get to come together in their communities and make decisions for their own communities. Because I'm not qualified, nor do I even want to be the one to make decisions for a community that I'm not a part of and don't intimately understand the needs of, or even, or understand the suffering of. It's not my business to make, the street level decisions for those communities. But what I can do is advocate for the ability for those communities to have that conversation and make that choice for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And can I tell you the reason why we're all having such a hard time making certain things come to fruition is because the actual people that we pay to do that job aren't doing their job, and they're called politicians. I think that because politicians, not just in this nation, but in most, and historically even from the days of ancient Greece and Rome, sell out to the highest bidder, we are all trying to figure out how to put out 150,000 fires with $1.50. The politicians, there is no accountability. They're not being put in jail. None are being executed for their crimes against humanity. And so all over there are these fires. Additionally, I think a complex problem is that, and I have a lot of Native Indian friends in my network. Some look Anglo, but they're actually Native Indian, of course, because of the mixing that occurred. Their group is very separated from the black group. The black group is separated from the LGBT group, and the LGBT group is set. We could go on and on. So instead of the groups coming together and saying, listen, I'm not LGBT, but that's your business. I'm not this, but that's your business. But what common puppet master is pulling these strings? We don't. So all our resources are split up. One group may be picketing the pipeline, the other group picketing a police killing, instead of conferences around the nation and world where we say, hey, listen, that's the same mayor that did so-and-so to the feminists. Oh, that's the same one that LGBT and did this. And then we say, tell you what, you got $1, I got 100, the other one has 1,000. Why don't we do one advertising campaign? Why don't we plan a picket where we all show up? So they split us up, and we're like little chickens in different areas, picketing one or two puppet masters. And it's inefficient, and it's ineffective. It's ad hoc, last minute. Yeah. Oh, they did something. Hey, let's go and picket. Oh, this happened. Yay, here we go. And another group, I'm not going with you. I'm LGBT. No, I'm going with the black folks. Hey, I'm going with the poor blacks. Confusion. Total confusion. Yeah, we can't succeed like that.
There's no cohesiveness. People are mad. They know that they're mad. But then, we can't get together and actually affect change unless there's some level of cohesiveness and ability to not just react from the emotional place of being mad, which we all are, because really, the truth is our politicians are all invested in arms dealers. I mean, they make billions of dollars on war. Our elected, quote unquote, elected officials are raking it in personally into their personal bank accounts, and there are, babies dying in rubble, basically. So we're all mad about something, and the point is that we just need to get really cohesive and recognize that these are all division tactics. They're tactics.
Exactly. It's not divide and conquer.
Yeah, it's not a problem for the elite who are profiting for people to get pissed off and so emotionally agitated that they riot. That's not a problem. That actually supports their business.
Their agenda.
It totally supports their agenda. So what we have to do is take stock of ourselves as individuals and recognize what is it that we're trying to accomplish here. Yes, maybe the truth is that overall what we want is a better world for everyone, but we have to be cohesive and thoughtful about how we go about that. And like Eric said, if there's someone who hasn't eaten for 3 days, they need food. Obviously, they need food. But the person who has not eaten for 3 weeks absolutely needs it more. And so because I've had 2 meals today, it's important that I am willing not just willing, but I want to feed those who have eaten, who haven't eaten for 3 weeks and then 3 days. It has to be authentically from the heart that you care enough about the well-being of someone who you've never met and maybe have nothing in common with. But it's and I think that's the real human nature, right? It's real human nature that we care, that we, that I'm not so separated from the suffering of someone halfway across the world just because I can't understand what they're going through. That's not a good enough excuse,
Yes,
and
can I tell you what they have done? If you remove fiat currency from the equation, therein lies a major part of the problem, because helping people isn't necessarily going to pay your rent, right? What they've built is a system where the most brutal people, I know relatives, some are brutal and some are peaceful. The brutal ones get all the academic awards. I've gone through it trying to post about peace and share about, and it's not really what the professors want to hear. So our system, if 1,000 of us are good and positive, there isn't the finance that comes from it to further fuel the system. So where do we get the funds? Well, we work other slave jobs to fuel something that won't return on investment to keep it going, until we also structure a system where the best cops, the best teachers, the best parents are awarded, whether that's fiat currency or some other form of enrichment. We'll be at a loss again, because the system itself, if I go out there and use my brain power to join a military and learn to bomb nations and become a commander, etc., I make zero money. So what do? Well, work a little job at McDonald's or something. How do I compete then against the big puppet masters? Impossible. And that is
exactly nailed it right on the head.
Yeah, and that's why we have to approach it from more than just a physical perspective, because we can't do this as necessarily as just human beings. We have to begin to remember and recognize that we are multidimensional beings with far more influence and power in the energetic realm right now. I mean, humanity as a whole, whether you've got money in the bank or a dirt floor, you have energetic power. And so we have to begin to recognize that there's a reason that we've forgotten that we have this energetic power, and that's because it serves the puppet masters, as you call them. So, we've got to get creative here outside of the realm of finance and, human street level, and recognize that we're multidimensional beings, and that it goes far beyond just, money and picketing and advertisements. There's more that we can do. There's much more that we can do. And when we stop eating GMO food and we stop watching TV and we start taking care of ourselves as individuals holistically, we start to generate momentum in that direction. We can do much more than we think we can do, or what we've been taught or led to believe that we can do, because history has been written by those puppet masters, and it's not true. There's a huge amount of disinformation about what has happened in our history, and we may never know actually what the true history is. But what we can do is decide from this point forward, what do we want the history of the future to be, because we're creating it right now. And I ask myself every day, what can I do? What can I do today differently that makes an impact? And it might not be that it has an impact on my life, and I mean, sometimes it's little. Sometimes it's making eye contact with a Muslim woman who's wearing a hijab and making eye contact and smiling at her. That's little. It may not do much in and of itself, but if every single person begins to move through their life in that way, things do change from an energetic perspective. So we're going to have to get creative and expand our solutions. And really, that's what Eric and I are talking about. That's what our show, that's the work that we do. We're both energy healers. That's the work that we do. So we we're moving in those metaphysical realms as well as the physical realms. You know, there's something that every single one of us can do to reach out to those who are suffering in ways that we don't have any idea about. And we're not doing that because it makes our own life better, but we're doing it because, damn it, enough suffering, right? Enough of that. And I don't know what your suffering has been, Jim, in particular, but that doesn't mean I can't have compassion and empathy and care about it. I can do that.
You can't fix a problem on the same level that it was created. That's exactly what we have to start doing, is going beyond the level where these problems were created. Because, like you were saying, the puppet masters control all of this. We're all divided into our own little groups, and we're all given just enough to be scared of losing it. And that's why we end up, at each other's throats. It's all about me, 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 me. It's not about us. And that's what we need to start transcending.
Yeah, and can I say I'm an atheist pastor? The two words seem to be paradoxical, but atheist because I see really no hard evidence or even soft evidence of a higher force that created life, even though in an inductive argument it could be considered, somewhat possible, but not in a deductive argument. But I have similar sentiments about spirituality because it's basically based on invisible beings that we can't test for. So much of my foundation is based now on physics, math, logic, common sense. And it does sometimes not fit into the philosophy or foundations of some of my potential allies because I'm atheist and they are either religious or spiritual. And often, if the foundations aren't similar, what happens is it's very hard to build, I think. Because in one way I'm thinking, well, no, I'm not even, that doesn't make any sense. Where's the evidence? And on their side, they're thinking, well, it's out there and it's going to occur. You just got to be positive with it. Meanwhile, my folks are getting clobbered over the head for 400 years here and in Africa for much more than that because, of course, Arabians went in first and started the clobbering about, I guess, for 400 or 500 years, maybe more.
We don't have to agree on whether there's a God or whose God is right to live by our highest sense of right. I mean, we can be divine without believing in anything. You don't have to have a belief system to be spiritual. I mean, I think being spiritual is, you can't define that for anyone else but yourself, ultimately.
We all know what's
Jim,
right and wrong. We all have that moral compass that tells us, what I'm doing right now, this is not right. This isn't right. The fact that I'm sitting by and allowing the suffering without doing anything about it, it's not okay, and so everybody can live by these codes. We all know that what is happening in this world is not okay. And just by becoming better than you were the day before, being more loving, more compassionate towards the suffering around you, you are becoming more divine, whether or not you believe in that or not. It's all about becoming more than you were the day before.
Jim, I just want to thank you so much for your contribution and for calling in and joining the discussion with us tonight. It was really lovely. We just have about 45 seconds left until the end of the show, and I just want to use the last 30 seconds for all of us to sort of do a little bit more of this group intention work. Let's direct it towards towards Florida and wherever this hurricane is about to hit, and just lend our intentional, energetic, emotional, whatever support that we can for the last few minutes of this show now.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you, everyone, for joining us and listening as well. Okay, thank you. Yeah, Jim, so we're off air now, but, we're all, the three of us are all still connected, so.
Oh, hey. Yeah, thank you for calling in, Jim. I really appreciated that.